These checks came from her friend's car, Amy Huizinga. Amy went on vacation to Puerto Rico, allowing Casey to use the car, and she allegedly took some checks. She's passing this bad paper.
If you look at her best friend, Amy Huizinga. Now, keep in mind, on July 15th, this was a day that Amy and her mom, Cindy, came over to her apartment where she was with Tony Lazaro and confronted her. That day, in Amy Huizinga's checking account, the balance was $49.99. On her last statement, her best friend now, on 6/20, the balance was $2,125.47. Great best friend.
Straight out to a special guest joining us, Jessica D'Onofrio from WKMG. Jessica, 754 pings on her cell phone have been picked up by authorities. What is significant about just 3% of them?
Well, the thing that is so interesting about all that work that was done by one of our investigative reporters here is that this child is last seen on June 15th, and on June 16th, it looks by these phone calls, by where they were hitting cell phone towers, these pings were hitting cell phone towers, and when these calls were made, that on the 16th is the date that something specifically happened to this child. Then by the end of the evening, around 9 o'clock sometime, she goes to Blockbuster, she goes and sleeps over at her boyfriend's house. You never see this child again. The next day, you've got a flurry of cell phone calls. The day after that, she borrows a shovel and goes in the backyard, backs her car up, and the theory is that she takes the child out of the backyard, puts it in a car, and leaves.
754 times her cell phone communicated from a cell tower, bouncing off 20 different cell towers. Now, Mike Brooks, 97% of those 754 calls were from the area of her home, her parents' home, Fusion nightclub, right, a friend's house, or boyfriend. The 3% that have captured the police attention are from where?
They're from around that area we were talking about, Nancy. I mean, we had talked about this earlier. We had heard that there were a number of cell towers around her house, between Tony Lazaro's house, and this area around Orlando International Airport. That is the area that they've been concentrating on.
It is southwest of the family home at Lee Vista Boulevard, and it is near where detectives are sending EquiSearch volunteers. Then, notably, the cell phone goes silent between 5:23 and 8:23 June 17. No text messages, no calls in, no calls out. And to you, Eleanor Dixon, this is a woman that lived on text messages. She's up till 2 o'clock, up at 5 a.m., texting various men, friends, you name it. And for those 3 hours, those hours in question, and at the location near the airport, everything goes radio silent. And behavioral evidence, Eleanor, what does it mean?
Exactly, Nancy. It means she's doing something, and certainly as the prosecutor in that case, I would argue that's when she's getting rid of the body in this case.
And thank you to Joe in Florida who has called in. He served 6 months on a Dade County grand jury. Eleanor, a grand jury, unlike a petit jury of 12, which hears your case ultimately, must only find a probable cause whether to indict, not that the case is proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
You're exactly right, Nancy, and the grand jurors just don't indict every case that comes down the pike. I've gotten plenty of no bills. In other words, we don't go forward with the grand jury.
Eleanor, I never got a no bill. When you say you got plenty of no bills, what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess what I mean, Nancy, is not every one of my cases that I present the grand jury have gone forward. In other words,
indictment.
Right, for an indictment. In other words, the grand jury's thoughtful. They say, we don't think there's enough evidence, and that's it.
Out to the line, Sandy in Florida. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Nancy.
What's your question, dear?
When Casey left the house after the fight with her mom and took Caylee, where did she go that night?
Interesting. Mark Williams, WNDB, where is it believed she went that evening?
Well, apparently she went out on the road and more than likely stayed with one of her boyfriends that night. That's the information that we've received. And from that point on, who knows?
To Vicki in Ohio. Hi, Vicki.
Hi.
What's your question, dear?
Well, I just have a question. I was wondering if they never find Casey's body, or Caylee's body, would Casey, A, be able to be indicted, and B, would it be a situation of like double jeopardy if they were to find her not guilty and then Lord willing, found the little girl's body?
Vicky, in Ohio, yes, she can be indicted without a body. It's happened many, many times. In fact, we'll put up a screen for you of high-profile cases that went forward and got convictions without a body. Tim Miller from EquiSearch just told you about one. And what was the second part of your question, Vicky?
Double jeopardy.
Oh, yes, double jeopardy. If she's tried, thanks, Eleanor, if she's tried without a body, acquitted, and then the body's discovered, no, she cannot be retried. To Marie in New York. Hi, Marie.
Hi, Nancy.
What's your question, dear?
I love watching your children. I think you're great.
Thank you.
A question, why don't they bring in a bunch of psychics? And also, have they done all her boyfriends the lie detecting for them to see if any of them were lying?
To Mark Williams, psychics have been brought in, even searched. What can you tell me about lie detector tests on boyfriends?
Well, lie detector tests on boyfriends obviously have been given to her ex-beaux, so to speak, and basically they were given to them by the sheriff's office just to clear up any timeline questions to make sure they were telling the truth. And from what we understand, everybody's telling the truth, because even though they can't use these in a courtroom, they can certainly put a timeline together to show where Casey was on a particular given day and a particular given hour, Nancy.
To Peter Odom and Paul Batista. Peter Odom, once an indictment is handed down, the state may be forced forward with a speedy trial demand. Explain.
Well, once an indictment is handed down, the clock begins ticking, and it varies from state to state, but they could be forced to trial within a very short period of time.
Forced by who, Paul Batista?
Forced by the defendant, Nancy. She's entitled to a fair and speedy trial, and it may well be that she'll ask for it here.
And Paul and Peter, I could see the defense doing this because it would allow the state no more time to prepare their case. Right, Eleanor?
That would be right, but I bet the state's got a lot more they haven't told the public about.
There's obviously one blowing factor, and that is that there is zero evidence in these documents that Casey harmed Caylee in any way, or even remotely supports that accusation.
Out to the lawyers, Paul Batista, Peter Odom, Eleanor Dixon, and psychoanalyst Bethany Marshall. First to you, Bethany. Does he have on blinders? Because we've got a cadaver dog hitting that only hits on human remains, hair from a dead person in the car trunk, the mom lying through her teeth about seemingly innocuous things revolving around her daughter, a host, an array of evidence.
Well, at first I thought he drank the Casey Anthony Kool-Aid, but actually, if the best thing he can do is discredit the grand jury, he's really grasping for straws at this point.
Eleanor, shouldn't he just remain silent? Shouldn't he take the fifth as well?
Well, he probably should, Nancy, but again, he's tainting the potential jury pool as well, and it's just typical defense, blah, blah, blah.
And we can expect the same at trial, right, Peter?
Well, his best defense here, Nancy, is the most common defense, the most reliable defense, reasonable doubt. He probably should just stay silent.
Paul?
Well, he's got a right to defend his client, Nancy, and that's precisely what the man is doing. He's got a right to articulate these things.
To Leonard Padilla, what do you expect to happen next week?
I believe there's going to be an indictment come down for murder, and I don't see Jose Baez changing his tactics. If he doesn't do something, if Casey doesn't come up with a body between now and then, there's definitely going to be an indictment, and shortly thereafter, Tim's going to find the body.
Everyone, let's stop and remember Navy Airman Apprentice Adrian Campos, 22, El Paso, Texas, remembered as the life of the party, devoted to others, loved traveling, adventure, dreamed of starting his own car repair shop. Leaves behind family grieving. Brother Carlos, sister Vanessa, widow Sylvia, baby girl Gabby. Adrian Campos, American hero. Thanks to our guests, but especially to you for being with us.